Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel, doing another contest entry. This is for Adam Lee and his 180 subs contest. If you guys haven't watched Adam's channel, definitely go in there and check it out, subscribe. If you love the 80s, you're going to love Adam and his channel. His link's down below if you want to go ahead and go check him out. Go sub right now. He's been here for, I believe, a little over a year now. I was turned on to Adam about 6 months ago and have followed him. I've probably watched every video he's put out since then. So his 180 subs contest was list your 5 favorite male vocalists from the 80s. I'm sorry, I don't know if it was 5. I think it was just the top male vocalist from the 80s. This one was one of the most difficult contests I've had to do. I obviously grew up in the 80s. And a lot of my musical tastes and my love for music started in the 80s, so just picking a couple or a handful was very difficult. And there was also some other issues with a lot of my favorite 80s bands I didn't get into until the 90s when I was actually a working musician and getting into more styles of music. And even some into the 2000s. One of these I just recently got into. So I've decided to do a couple of honorable mentions up front, and then I'll also do my list of stuff that I was actually listening to and loving in the 80s. So I got a little cheat sheet here, so if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at some of the singers' names. A few of these, I know the band, I love the band, but I don't remember the singers' names. So the first honorable mention, and because it's playing in the background, it's going to be Black Francis from the Pixies. It's an honorable mention because I just got into them about 10 years ago. I don't think they get enough credit. You know, a lot of people mention them as one of the big influences, but I don't think people realize how important their influences were. You wouldn't have Nirvana without the Pixies. You wouldn't have the Melvins without the Pixies. There's just so many bands out there that wouldn't exist without this band right here. And the back we're playing Doolittle. My favorite album from them is actually Pixies. Is actually Surfer Rosa. There's really not a bad song on either one of these. I can't even pick a favorite. Where's My Mind? It's probably one of their biggest hits off of this, and it is one of my favorite songs from the Pixies. But anything off of their first 4 albums, I mean, just beginning to end, is amazing. Even their later albums, when Kim Deal was back in the band and writing again, amazing. Anything with Kim Deal and Black Francis is worth having in your collection. So that's my first runner-up. Second runner-up is... I don't know who I want to do second. Let's go with Bernard Sumner from New Order. I got into New Order in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. It may have been like 94, 95. Again, this is another band where their first 4 or 5 albums, I love beginning to end. I can't really pick a favorite from any of them. This is just an amazing band. If you haven't listened to New Order, you've got to get in. You check them out. Everything about them is just iconic. The sound, even the artwork that they use, just an amazing band. It's a very 80s back right there. If you grew up in the 80s, you know what this is, and I'll just leave it at that. If you don't know what this is, Google it. The next one, I actually got into this band in 1990, so just at kind of the end of the 80s. This is one of probably my top 3 favorite albums of the 90s, Depeche Mode, Violator. And it's Dave Gahan, or Gahan, however you want to say it. My favorite song from them is probably Enjoy the Silence. Personal Jesus is also amazing. But, I mean, they just got so many good songs. It's another band that's really just hard to pick one out. And actually, this is my original pressing. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be doing my 100 subs contest pretty quick, or pretty soon here. I'm only 4 or 5 subs away. And the new pressing that was just came out a few months ago of Violator will be one of the prizes. So if you're interested, definitely sign up for my channel so you can get in on that contest. So Dave Brand. So the next one, this is my second to last honorable mention, is going to be Peter Murphy from Bauhaus, however you want to say it. Another band. I mean, my favorite song from him is probably Bela Lugosi's Dead, just because that was the song that got me into Bauhaus. Another one, though, there's really not a bad album, in my opinion, especially their first 3 or 4 albums are just, it's where it's at. Just beautiful, beautiful music. And this one, again, is a runner-up. I just got into Bauhaus about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I would say. I was familiar with Bela Lugosi's Dead and a couple of their other hits. Actually, one of their hits is She's in Parties. I remember that from the 80s. And Bela Lugosi's Dead from the 80s and from a bunch of movies. I just wasn't really that much into them at that point in time. I wasn't into the style of music at that time. I was more into the arena rock, into the hair metal at the time. So, but definitely at the top of my list now is Bauhaus and Peter Murphy. So next up, this was probably my favorite band of the 80s, and it's still one of my all-time favorite bands. At least the stuff they put out in the 80s. I'm not a fan of anything that they put out after that, but Motley Crue, this is Theater of Pain. I selected this one because this is the album that got me into Motley Crue. Once I got into this, I started listening to their older stuff. Shout at the Devil and all that. But my favorite album from them is actually Dr. Feelgood, which I was going to show that one, but like I said, this was the one that got me into metal, hair metal, but this is the album that got me into metal. Once I started listening to this, I started listening to Shout at the Devil, and that got me into Headbangers Ball, and that turned me on to Anthrax and Metallica and Megadeth and every other band from that era that was just amazing. Testament. But this was kind of the band that started it all for me. I've seen them a couple times already. They're amazing live. I'm going to see them for their final concert in 2 weeks here when they hit Atlanta with what the hell is his name? Alice Cooper. Sorry. So Vince Neil, Motley Crue. These are my actual picks. This is the stuff I was into in the 80s. Next up, we've got Joe Elliott from Def Leppard. I know this is their first album of the 80s. The album that I was really into at the time, like with most people, was Hysteria. Pour Some Sugar on Me, Rocket, Woman. There's not a bad song on that. That album was just amazing from beginning to end. And my whole family listened to it. My mom wasn't into hard music, and she would listen to that and kind of bob her head as we were playing that. It was just a very amazing, a very transitional album for a lot of people. It was like the Motley Crue was for me. It was an album that got people into heavier music, into hard rock. I don't have Hysteria on vinyl. That's why it's oddly enough, that's the only Def Leppard I don't have on vinyl. So this was the first Def Leppard I ran across, so I grabbed this one. But Joe Elliott. Next up, you just can't. There's not many people that listen to hard rock or heavy metal in the 80s that wouldn't have put this on their list. If they say that they didn't listen to this band in the 80s, are lying. But John Bon Jovi, and this is New Jersey. This is my second favorite album. My favorite album from them would be Slippery When Wet, which again I don't have on vinyl. I have it on cassette and on CD. I just haven't run across it yet. But John Bon Jovi, New Jersey. This is a band that I got into in the late 80s. I want to say this was 88 or 89. And it was this album, which is why I chose this one. This was the album that turned me on to Ozzy. A friend of mine had this and played it, and I thought it was the coolest thing I had ever heard. So I asked him to borrow it. I borrowed it for a couple of weeks. I was pretty stoked when I found this in mint condition a couple months ago. Ozzy Osbourne. Oh, I got that. Sorry. My favorite off of this are probably "Shot in the Dark" and "Killer of Giants." My favorite Ozzy songs are "Mama, I'm Coming Home." Oh man, what else? There's so many to choose from. Mr. Crowley, Crazy Train. That's another one. It's hard to pick favorites from Ozzy. I mean, just especially his music from the 80s. Just so many good songs. So the next couple, we'll save those. Let's go ahead and throw this one up there. This is another one that if you're a kid of the 80s or even a young adult of the 80s, you didn't miss this. I mean, there was a reason this is one of the top-selling albums of the 80s. It's funny, I go back and listen to it, and I don't think it what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it sounds as good today as it did in the 80s. I don't think it's just not as good as it was back then. We'll leave it at that. Favorite songs off of here: Thriller, Beat It, Billie Jean, Girl Is Mine. Just another a killer album. Michael Jackson in that era was just amazing. I was a kid of MTV. I was a latchkey kid, so I would come home and my parents would be at work for 3 or 4 hours, and I would just sit there with my eyes glued to MTV, and this song Thriller would come on every couple hours. If you haven't seen that video, go online and check it out. It's like a 14 or 15 minute video. Amazing video. The Billie Jean video is really cool too. But Michael Jackson, Thriller. Next up, from that same era, Purple Rain, Prince and the Revolution. This was the album that turned me on to Prince. And once I heard Prince, I got every album that came out after that. On cassette. I didn't have any of Prince's stuff on vinyl back in the 80s. But When Doves Cry. What's the song? Darling Nikki. It's probably one of the least talked about songs on here. That is one of my favorite Prince songs. Of course, Purple Rain is an amazing song, When Doves Cry. So the first time I heard Prince was When Doves Cry. I used to frequent the roller skating rinks, as did most of us back in the early to mid 80s. I was there probably 3 or 4 days a week skating, and that may be an exaggeration. I was there every weekend and maybe one time during the week. But the first time I heard Prince was they had one of those old school RGB big screens. It was like a 60-inch screen, and it had these 3 big tubes that would show the 3 colors up on the screen. For those of you that remember big screen TVs back then, and they were thousands upon thousands of dollars back then. It was ridiculous how much they cost. But I was at the roller skating rink, and When Doves Cry came on. And I stopped and was on the little side thing there, the side rail, just watching that video. It just blew me away. And then I saw the movie shortly after that, and I love that. It's one of my favorite movies from the 80s and one of my favorite soundtracks ever. So, the next one, this is one of the albums that got me into music. This was the first cassette tape that my father bought for me, Men at Work, Business as Usual. He actually bought it for a friend of ours, a family friend, for Christmas, and that family friend already had it. And my dad said, well, what do you want in place of it? And he said, Rat. So my dad got him Rat. Oddly enough, this is also the time that I got into Rat. But I heard him play this song, or this album, and I thought it was really cool. So I told my dad I wanted it for Christmas. So my dad took that cassette that he had bought for my friend George and gave it to me for Christmas. And I played this nonstop. There's not a bad track on this album. My favorites on here are Overkill, Underground, Who Can It Be Now, Down Under, Johnny Be Good, or Be Good Johnny. People just love to play with words. Everything on here is amazing. I did 2 talent shows as a young kid to songs from this album, where we made cardboard keyboards and pretended to be playing the synth, me and a friend of mine, as we were singing a couple of the songs from this album. I didn't win. It was horrible. I wish there were videos of it so I could see how bad it was. but I mean, this was really one of the albums that got me down that road to loving music. So, and the next one is also one of those albums that's real important from that time period that got me into music, and that's Duran Duran Rio. I chose this one because this is the first Duran Duran album I got. It's funny. I had she was actually a girlfriend. And I say girlfriend kind of loosely because it was like second grade, but one of the girls that I really had the hots for, and I later asked to go steady with me, you know, back when we asked about, or will you go with me, or whatever it was we asked back then. She had pictures of the band members plastered to her, the inside of her desk of all 4 band members, and of course her favorite was Simon Le Bon. That's who she was most in love with. But I went to her house a couple times. Whenever we went to her house, she would play this album. And she also had one of the earlier albums with the first lead singer, and I can't remember what his name was. But Simon Le Bon was where it was. You know, that was really the best of Duran Duran. I think there were actually 5 members. I said 4. It doesn't matter. But she had the pictures plastered everywhere. She did the stereotypical 80s, you know, with the different colors in her hair, and kind of dressed the way frat kids think that we dressed back in the 80s, which is completely wrong. But she got me into Duran Duran, and then it's funny, I went home and was looking through my dad's albums, and he had this album. And I must have listened to it 5 or 6 times that day on vinyl, actually on this record player. This is what we were listening to back in the 80s. And another just a really influential album that I've never lost a love for. I actually have most of the Duran Duran collection on vinyl now, and they get pretty regular spins. But that's it, Adam. That's my I love 80s list of best male vocalists. Probably more than you were looking for. Sorry, and this video went way longer than I expected it to. But hey, again, if you guys aren't watching Adam Lee's videos, you got to get in there and check him out. His channel is I Love 80s. Very cool channel, very cool music, very cool guy. Thank you for watching.